The following podcast contains explicit language and adult subject matter suitable for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is advised. Are you looking for joyous and inspiring stories about pregnancy and birth? Full disclosure, you will not be hearing those types of stories here. This true crime podcast will reveal the bizarre, crazy, and sometimes criminal real-life experiences while working at the labour and delivery unit. Our stories share the nurse's point of view. So get ready as we stir things up with the Stirrup.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the premiere episode of the Stirrup podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Murray, and next to me is my co-producer and brother from the same mother, Kevin Michaels. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Kevin. So, just so you're aware, Kevin has no medical background and is hearing these stories for the first time.
That's correct. So you'll be getting my honest reaction to Joanne's stories. So pray for me, please.
Yeah, as the stories get more intense, you might find Kevin sipping from his courage juice a little bit more frequently.
It's water.
Cheers. This podcast will have a two-story format. The first story being one of my tales from the labor room, and I will not be including any real names of patients or facilities that I've worked in. The second story being a true crime case involving the obstetric world. This means crimes involving pregnant women and practitioners that work in the world of obstetrics. My hope is to bring awareness to these crimes and help pregnant birthing people recognize when they are at risk. I've always been a true crime fan. Some of my favorite true crime podcasts are Dark Routine, Morbid, True Crime All the Time. Shout out to Mike and Gibby.
Yeah, Gibby.
They're our favorites. Dark Topic, and my all-time favorite, Sword and Scale. Along with being a nurse for over 20 years, I'm also a childbirth educator with my own company called Mind Body Baby NYC. So if you're a soon-to-be parent and would like to have a Zoom childbirth education class or in-person class or newborn care class, please look us up. I will link the website in our show notes. So let's start the show with my labor room tale for this week.
Oh, here we go.
This tale is definitely one of my funniest memories I have while working as a labor and delivery nurse.
Okay.
I had a patient who was having her first baby. She was 10 centimeters dilated, which means she's in the second stage of labor, and now it's time to start pushing.
Okay.
The patient's legs were in stirrups for support.
Which is where the name of the podcast comes from.
Exactly.
The Stirrup.
The Stirrup.
Just in case y'all were wondering, now you know what Stirrup is.
That's right, Kevin.
See, I'm smart.
Good branding. Her doctor is standing between both legs, gowned, gloved, and ready to catch this baby. I'm standing on one side of the patient's other leg, and her husband's standing on the other side of her leg. And we're supporting the legs even though they're in stirrups. So as we're pushing, and the doctor's standing there, there's a spotlight on mom's vagina so we could see what's going on.
Okay. Is it a ring light like the ones we use?
No, it's even hotter than that.
It's even hotter than, wow.
More like those McDonald's warming lights that you see warming up the fries in McDonald's. Is similar to that. It gets really hot under those lights.
Oh, yes, just like the McDonald's fries.
Yes,
All right.
exactly. You'll never look at McDonald's fries the same way
No,
again after
never.
this.
Never. Every time I go to McDonald's, I'm gonna be like, oh, Lord, they warming up some hot coochie under there.
It's so nasty. So after about 30 minutes of pushing with each contraction, her doctor, who happens to be a female provider, uses her sterile gloved hand to perform a vaginal exam to see, how well the patient's doing while she's pushing and how much further we have left to go.
Okay.
What sets this delivery apart from the rest is that when she checked this patient, the doctor looks up at the patient and her husband and says, "Did you know you had 2 vaginal openings?"
What? Is it 2 openings? How's that even possible?
Well, this patient was born with a rare condition called a double vagina.
A double what?
So
Okay.
let me explain.
Yeah,
let me
please.
explain. This means a woman is born with a longitudinal vaginal septum and fibrous tissues that divide the woman's vagina into 2 halves. This is what gives the woman 2 vaginal opens that both lead to 1 uterus. And I'll insert a picture in this.
Wait, so the doctor
explain
told her,
this.
how does she not know this? Like, the doctor's telling her this, and like, this is news to her?
Yes, this is news to her.
So, all right, I got a whole bunch of questions. We got to go way off subject. Sorry, people. Wait, if she has 2 vaginal openings, she's just not finding out?
Yeah, she's just now finding out. Most women don't realize that technically you have 3 openings below, and they don't use a mirror to really look and see what's going on down there. They come to us, and that's when the questions that they ask, I realize they really don't know their own anatomy.
I mean, yeah, I could get that because you can't see down there, but
the 2 vaginal openings, it could have been hidden by pubic hair. So
my question is this: why is the delivery doctor the first one that's telling her this? Hasn't she got gyno appointments before this and prenatal appointments and all? Don't they look down there?
They do. They're supposed to.
Nobody ever told her this before.
I guess they never checked or never went looking for another opening. They just went to the more obvious opening. But you have to realize now she's pushing, everything's swollen, her legs are wide open, there's a huge spotlight. So now I guess it's easier to visualize that she has 2 openings.
If I was her, I'd go back and have some questions for my gyno. Like, what were you doing down there all these years noticed this?
And not notice it? No, you're right. You're right. I was thinking the same thing. I looked at the provider. Like, how did you not realize that this was a possibility?
How did you not notice? I can understand her not knowing it. But, and then all right, go ahead, continue.
So I would say the funniest part of this whole story is after the patient was told that she had 2 vaginal openings, she turned to her husband and said, "So which one did you use to get me pregnant?"
Oh, I forgot about him. I was talking about the doctors. I forgot about him.
Exactly.
He didn't even know. I mean,
he did not know. That means he probably didn't spend much time down there.
Either he didn't spend much time or he thought he was the man. He's like, yeah, every time I go, I hit the hole, no problem. Like, no, there was 2 holes. He was cheating the whole time.
All right. So, yes, that was one of my all-time funniest memories from the labor room and very unusual memories. There's a lot of crazy things that go on the labor room floor. Now it's time to dive into our true crime case of the week. And this is the unsolved murder of Eve Brown.
Eve Brown. All right, let's get into it.
This is a cold case from 24 years ago and is very personal to me. It is one of the major reasons why I decided to start this podcast, because it's an unsolved murder of one of my former coworkers.
Yeah, it's one thing to watch the stories on TV. It's like, but when it hits different when it's someone you know.
True. And that's what happened with me. I watch these true crime cases constantly. ID channels, one of my favorite channels ever in life. And I've never seen this story told on any of Datelines or Cold Case. Nothing. I've never seen any mention of this case. So I felt doing this podcast is a good way of getting this case out there and hopefully one day having it solved.
Are you listening, Dateline?
Exactly.
We got a show for you. Hello. There's a mystery unsolved.
So Eve Brown was a 29-year-old mother from Plainview, Long Island, New York. She worked as a counselor at a nursing home facility in Far Rockaway, Queens, which is the same place that I started my nursing career. This nursing home was a small facility with only 200 beds. And with the exception of our floor, the rest of the facility was a typical nursing home care center with elderly patients. But Eve and I both worked on a traumatic brain injury floor with younger patients who suffered from injuries that were related to damage to their brain. So these could be strokes, car accidents, brain tumors, even gunshot wounds.
Oh, wow. Gunshot wounds? And
yes.
brain tumors all lumped together?
Yes. A lot of our patients were ex-cons with serious anger and self-control issues.
Oh, I think I remember this. I remember a crazy story you told me about some patient named John that threw shit at you and your coworkers.
Oh God,
at the nursing
yes,
station.
I remember that story. Yes, I remember that. Me and Mrs. Parker was sitting there at the nursing station filling out our charts, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I just saw this object fly over the nursing station, plop, land right behind us. A huge piece of doo-doo.
Oh
shit.
my God. You threw it like a baboon
at the zoo. Exactly. Can I just tell you, Miss Parker and I, we scattered like roaches when you turn the lights on. You've never seen two women move so fast in your life. And it came from one of our favorite patients, Johnny. I'm like,
he was your
Johnny,
favorite patient?
how could you do this to us? Johnny's sitting across from the nursing station in his wheelchair. And he just reaches into his diaper and launches this huge piece of shit at us.
God. He was probably sitting on it and it was uncomfortable.
But Johnny was verbal. He could have told us what's
verbal.
going on. I was so hurt. I was like, Johnny, we feed you. We give you your meds. We change your diapers. And this is how you think. It's not like he's ever done it before. It was just so shocking to me. Like, I can't believe I was so hurt by Johnny.
I was like, Johnny, you going back to your room. You ain't sitting by the nursing station no more. You done lost your privileges.
Fucking Johnny. The things nurses have to deal with.
Word.
So as one of the charge nurses on the floor, I was responsible for giving medications and doing the staff assignments. Our young population were provided with a lot of additional activities. For example, physical therapy, occupational therapy. They would go on field trips. We would throw parties for them, play games with them. And they also had speech therapy as well. The therapists and counselors and nursing staff tend to be younger on this unit, and we liked to frequently socialize with each other before and after work, during work.
All right, that makes a good, good
exactly, a good co-worker environment.
Yeah.
As a result, there were a lot of rumors going around about who was sleeping with who and what was true and what wasn't true.
Yep.
Typical
General Hospital environment.
Exactly.
Grey's Anatomy.
Exactly. True. Eve was also a marriage counselor and saw clients in her spare time. Nothing gave Eve more joy than being able to save a couple's marriage. Married for 5 years to her husband, Larry Brown, who was a special education teacher at a middle school in Long Island, after years of trying, Eve was overjoyed to be pregnant with her first baby. She wanted to name her baby Ethan if it was a boy or Leah if it was a girl. Tragically, though, on July 10th, 1999, at 5 months pregnant, Eve went missing.
Oh, man. Okay.
According to Eve's mother, Bonnie Eskins, she last saw her daughter leaving the Mets versus Yankees game at Shea Stadium in the Bronx.
Subway Series.
Love the Subway Series.
Yep.
Eve decided to leave early with Larry to beat the crowd since she was 5 months pregnant and didn't want to risk injury to her or her unborn fetus.
Of course. Don't blame her.
Exactly. I would do the same thing because after drinking all day, those crowds become dangerous.
Yep, true.
After Eve left Shea Stadium with her husband, they went home to their house in Plainview, Long Island. According to Larry, he last saw his wife backing her black 1994 Chevy Geo Prism out of their driveway at 7:30 p.m. that night. Eve told Larry she was going to visit her girlfriend Tessa, who lives in Freeport, Long Island, about 15 miles away from her home, and left with an overnight bag because she may end up spending the night with Tessa. Around 1 a.m. on July 11th, Larry called Eve's cell phone to find out if she was coming home, but she didn't pick up. He then went to sleep because he had to get up early the next day to go back to Shea Stadium for another game. At 9 a.m. the next morning, and still with no word from Eve, Larry called Eve's mother, Bonnie, to find out where she could be. Bonnie stated her skin ran cold when she spoke to Larry. She had an overwhelming sense that something was wrong. Bonnie states Eve has never ever been out of contact or in any type of trouble. Her motherly instincts kicked in and she just knew her little girl was in trouble. Bonnie contacted the Nassau County Police Department and the search for Eve began. And this is where the story gets really crazy, Kevin.
Okay, what's going on now?
Police investigations revealed that Eve's friend Tessa was out of town at her grandmother's funeral in the Dominican Republic at the time when Eve went missing. And I know what you're thinking, Kevin, that Larry created a fake story about Eve visiting her friends without knowing that Eve's friend was out of town at the time.
Yep, you read my mind. It's hard to believe. Oh, Lying Larry.
I know his name even rhymes with liar, right?
Lying Larry. That's your name from now on.
But Bonnie, Eve's mom, admits at the game earlier that day, Eve did tell her she was planning on visiting her friend Tessa.
Oh, what? So she lied.
That's right. Eve lied.
Eve lied. Uh-oh. Okay, Larry. Might have to take off the lion off your name.
Wait, don't be so quick. Don't be so quick.
Hold on. You still got an L.
Hold that thought.
You L Larry right now.
During their investigation, police were given Eve's diary by her husband, Larry. Shockingly, in this diary, Eve admitted to having multiple affairs.
What? Hold up. All right, so first of all, she's a marriage counselor?
Yes, she's a marriage counselor, Kevin.
Oh, and she just taken to practice what she preaches?
Obviously not.
How's she counseling people's marriages, but she cheating in her marriage?
That's $1 million question.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
I guess she was doing what worked well for her marriage.
I guess so. All right. Well, Larry, you're back to Larry.
I first started to hear rumors that she was having an affair a few months before Eve actually became pregnant. Eve could be described as quiet, sweet, but definitely naive. According to family friends, rumors were circulating that Eve was not happy in her marriage of 5 years because she was dealing with the stress of not being able to conceive a baby with her husband, Larry. She was still flirting. She was seen flirting with one of the facility's maintenance workers, whose real name I will not mention.
It's always the facilities guys and maintenance guys. All right.
But for the sake of this podcast, I will call him by his nickname that I personally gave him, Chester.
Chester the molester.
Yeah, for you youngins out
For
there.
you youngins out there, Chester is short for Chester the molester, if you haven't heard it before.
Yeah, it's for those creepy guys that you just got a bad feeling when you were around them. They were called Chester the molester.
I call them creepers now. What else do they call them now? I forgot.
Oh, I have no idea.
They have a million names for them. But yeah, we used to call them Chester the molester.
So this was our Chester the molester for our facility. So Chester was a Hispanic male in his 30s. And yes, he did have a creepy vibe. He would look at women through his thick glasses like he was seeing right through their clothes. I always felt so uncomfortable around Chester.
I mean, he probably had bad vision.
Whatever. Shortly after the rumors of an affair between Eve and Chester had started, Eve miraculously became pregnant.
Oh, that's a convenient coincidence.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
And he's Hispanic too. He got that machismo. He put that Rico Suave on her. Knocked up immediately.
I don't think any of our coworkers believed for a second that Eve's baby actually belonged to her husband, Larry.
Oh, wow.
So now it looks like Eve lied to her husband and her parents because she was on her way to meet her lover for a tryst that night. When questioned by investigators, Chester acknowledged his affair with Eve, confessing that he cared for her a lot. And according to detectives, he was very cooperative in their investigation.
Okay, so maybe Chester was misunderstood.
Yeah, possibly. I still trust my instincts.
His x-ray vision.
Eve's father, Jay Eskins, then began receiving disturbing phone calls from Eve's cell phone. Over the next 10 days, he received 3 phone calls. Every time he answered, a male voice would say hello and then hang up. Jay knew his daughter may be hurt by somebody when she went missing, but after receiving these phone calls, he had to face the grim reality that his daughter and grandchild may be dead.
Yeah, that's really messed up. It takes a real low-life asshole to harass a victim's family, like, after the fact. That's like next-level cruelty.
I know. It absolutely makes my stomach turn. You know, there's multiple cases out there where murderers continue to terrorize the victim's family with multiple phone calls. They must get some type of sick pleasure out of doing it and torturing the victims' families. With the help of the NYPD Technical Assistance Resource Unit, police at the 67th Precinct were able to trace the mysterious phone calls to a man who told them Eve's phone had been stolen from a U-Haul truck left in a lot in Brooklyn, New York. And the very next day, Eve's geoprism was then found in the same area with multiple parking tickets on it in front of a suspected chop shop.
In front of a chop shop?
Yeah. So it's obvious this man stole Eve's phone out of a U-Haul, which was near this chop shop where her car was located. The thing is, who's writing these tickets? They didn't run the license plate and realize this is a car from a missing woman.
Person. Right, like, yeah. They're just writing tickets and then walking off, just filling their quota.
Exactly, these meter maids.
Yeah, exactly. The meter guys, like, they just walk around and write tickets to fill their quota. That's all they care about.
There were no personal effects found inside, but police did find Eve's blood on the steering column in her car.
Oh, wow.
Instead of taking Eve's car as evidence, the cops decided to watch her car to see who may approach it. And on July 20th, cops watched a small-time car thief enter Eve's car, which was unlocked and had the keys on the floor.
Yeah. That's such an obvious setup. Like any thief could have been like, who the hell left this car here with keys in it?
That is such an obvious setup.
Keys in it, like, yeah, like, you're just playing yourself. You steal that.
So obviously this fool drove around in the car in the alleyway, removed the mirrors, removed everything, the airbag out of his car. Because I guess he just thought it was his lucky day. He came across the car unlocked with the keys in it.
Big dummy.
Not surprisingly, cops arrested him and questioned him, but eventually he was released due to lack of evidence and the fact that it was a setup.
Obviously a setup.
Eve's parents then hired a private investigator to look for their daughter. And according to Bonnie, Eve's husband, Larry, refused to speak to the PI, which was very suspicious at the time.
Yes, definitely.
He did agree to take a lie detector test, which he promptly failed. So he's living up to his name again, Kevin.
Oh, lying Larry. What the hell made Larry think he could pass a lie detector test?
He was being a little too ambitious there.
Yeah.
And shortly after, he cut off all communication with Eve's family.
Now, I don't know what made you think that you could pass a lie detector test, Larry.
I don't know. Larry's probably a narcissist, and most narcissists out there think they can actually beat a lie detector machine, which I know it's not admitted in a court of law because it's not 100%. But in this case, I choose to believe the machine.
Over lying Larry.
According to Larry's lawyers, who, by the way, he hired within hours of Eve's disappearance.
That's not suspect, Larry. Not at all.
According to Larry's lawyer, his client has been cooperative with the detectives by having several interviews and handing over his electronic devices. He has advised his client not to be available for any further interrogations. In 1999, Larry had the nerve to tell the Daily News that he and Eve had the perfect marriage. I know, really, Larry?
Lying Larry strikes again.
Based on the facts so far, the most likely scenario is that Larry found Eve's diary that night after the game where she talked about her multiple affairs, or realized she was not going to he realized she was not going to her friend's house, but was actually meeting her lover instead. And then he killed her in an act of rage.
So, yeah, that's what I would guess.
Even though police interviewed over 30 people, most of them being my former co-workers.
Did they interview you?
Unfortunately not. They felt like I was too far out of the loop.
Wow.
I wanted to be interviewed, but I didn't know much. I just knew about the rumors.
Oh, okay.
Eve's parents were so desperate for answers, they went to the Montel Williams show to speak to the famous psychic Sylvia Round. They felt Sylvia could possibly help them as to, finding out where their daughter may be.
Montel Williams show? That's a blast from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. For you young folks who don't know who Montel Williams is, you can Google him. He was like, what?
He was like the male version of Oprah back in the day.
Back in the day, the male Ricky Lake. Well, y'all probably don't even know who Ricky Lake is.
God, Kevin, we're old.
Yeah, I'm aging myself right now. I'm going to cut that part out. He's a male Ellen.
At the time, I actually sat down to watch this episode because, I was very concerned as well. I wanted to know where Eve was, where my coworker, and to see if, Sylvia could actually give us some information to find her and her unborn baby. But to my surprise, Sylvia told Bonnie and Jay that she thinks Eve is alive and well and living in Florida.
In Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
And she actually said near a body of water close to Disneyland.
What? So she told these poor people that their missing daughter was at the happiest place on earth?
Basically, yes.
Chilling with Mickey Mouse?
When those words came out of her mouth, I just knew she was crazy.
Oh, Lord.
I later found out that Sylvia Brown would charge grieving, desperate families looking for their loved ones $600 for a 30-minute session.
What? $600?
Yes.
So what? So wait, that's
So today's money.
Today's money. That's like over $1,000.
Yep.
In today's money.
In today's money.
Oh.
And she was so famous at that time. I know she made
She
millions of
definitely made
dollars
millions off
doing
that, 'cause
this.
she was on TV all the time, on all them talk shows.
On all the talk shows. On November 15th, 2000, construction workers installing a fence between Fresh Creek Basin and Stirrup City, which is a housing complex in Brooklyn, New York.
I know Stirrup City.
Yeah, back in the day, we used to hang out there. Construction workers found Eve's body buried in a patch of dirt right off the Belt Parkway. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the New York Brooklyn area, the Belt Parkway does run along the upper New York Bay, which is a body
of water. Oh shit! So Sylvia was right about one part.
Yeah, she was wrong about Disneyland, but she was right about the water.
Now,
she was half right.
Brooklyn ain't nowhere near Disney World, but she got the water part right.
She got the water part right.
I give her half credit.
They found Eve's skull and bones tied with rope in garbage bags.
Oh, man.
She had to be identified using her dental records. Although Eve's bones were taken to a medical examiner, her death was, ruled a homicide, but there was no mention as to whether or not they found the baby's body or if any fetal bones were present. I could not find an autopsy report, and since this case is still an open case, a cold case, there was no trial, so there's very limited information available on this case.
Probably not a lot of public information since it's still an open case.
Mm-hmm. Eve's parents, Bonnie and Jay, were absolutely devastated. Not only did they lose their daughter, but they also lost their grandchild. And this story gets even crazier because the next day, a second set of female human remains were found in Brooklyn at the same construction site.
What? Another body?
That's right, another body.
So this could be like a dumping ground for some serial killer?
Exactly. Investigators were trying to figure out whether this was just a popular dumping ground for multiple killers, or was there one killer who was just reusing the same burial site? He could have been the one to kill Eve. Eve's family considers her husband Larry a viable suspect because of his reluctance to cooperate with police questioning. Eve's mom is quick to point out that Larry didn't contact police, and he failed a lie detector test and refused to speak with the family's PI. Larry has since cut off all communication with Eve's family.
Or she could have been kidnapped and killed by a random serial killer with a dumping ground in Brooklyn.
That's true as well. That's why this story is just so confusing.
It's very confusing now. We got Larry, we got Chester, now we got could be possibly some third random serial killer. Mm-hmm. Wow.
But here comes another crazy twist to this story. I hope you're taking note.
I'm starting to get lost. Let's go.
On November 11th, 2002, the New York Post reported that police thought they had a break when they discovered that Eve's cell phone had made a call in Valley Stream the night of her disappearance.
Okay.
Why this is significant is because the call was made a few blocks from another one of Eve's co-workers' homes.
Da, da, da.
Or should I say Eve's married co-workers' home.
Oh, Lord, we about to enter the Twilight Zone.
So, my very nosy, but don't miss a beat former co-workers informed the police that Eve was rumored to be having an affair with a second coworker prior to her going missing.
Wow, this is getting messy.
I didn't even realize that. I knew about Chester because that was kind of obvious. You know, I saw their interactions while we were at work, so I knew something was up there. But this second coworker totally surprised me.
About the second one.
Caught me off guard.
Wow.
So for the sake of this podcast, let's call this second coworker Brian. I'm not going to use real names, but if you want to know his real identity, you can always look up the article. Brian was a tall, good-looking, charismatic African-American man who I thought was happily married with 2 kids. I was shocked to find out this information years later during my research for this story.
Oh, you didn't find out till you did the research?
I didn't find out till I did the research for this podcast.
Wow, how could this get any messier?
It can, because Brian's wife also worked at our facility.
Oh, hell no. You got me making this up.
Nope, I'm not making it up, Kevin. I am not making this up. Yes. She worked with us as well, and they seemed like the perfect happy couple.
Wow.
Brian worked as the head of our recreation department on our floor, and his wife was our social worker. He was a very good-looking, nice guy, no creepy vibes at all.
No creepiness, okay.
Brian and his wife were happily married, the picture-perfect couple. I must have been blinded by his perfect husband act because I was completely unaware that this affair was going on.
That's all right. I mean, you were a lot younger back then. I mean, if you
That's
didn't
true.
see it.
It was my first job out of nursing school, so I was a lot more naive.
He was really good because, I mean, she had to be part of the rumor mill, too. She had to been, like you said, it was like a...
Yeah, because my coworkers knew about it.
Right.
They told the cops. So there must have been something obvious that I didn't see.
And nobody... So they all knew about Chester.
Mm-hmm. And they knew about Brian, too.
They knew about Brian. You didn't know about Brian.
I didn't know about Brian.
But they knew about Brian. But it never got back to Brian's wife, who works there.
Not as far as I know. I don't know that for sure, but not as far as I know.
This is just messy.
Back to the story. Even though Brian vehemently denied having an affair with Eve, police decided they needed to take this investigation further. They searched Brian's house in Valley Stream, Long Island, and took Brian down to the Brooklyn precinct for questioning and to obtain his DNA. So I'm sure at that point, maybe Brian's wife found out that he was a suspect in this case.
I'm sure she had to have found out something at that point.
And unfortunately, at this point, this is where this case gets cold. 24 years later, this case remains open with no arrest. Eve's parents were heartbroken over the loss of their daughter and grandchild and started a charitable foundation named in her honor. So, Kevin, thoughts on this case?
Whew, that's a lot to unpack.
A lot to unpack.
There's at least 3 good suspects.
Exactly.
There's a mystery guy.
There's Larry, there's
Larry,
Brian, and they all had pretty good motives because
Chester.
I'm sure Brian wouldn't want Eve to ruin his happy home by revealing the fact that she may be pregnant with his child.
Right. So he's a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And then Larry's a suspect because he read her diary, which, look, can y'all stop using diaries, ladies? Like, y'all just telling on yourselves.
It's so true.
Telling on yourselves, writing everything down. Like, you don't need to relive it.
Exactly. If you're doing dirt out there, keep it to yourself. Do not write it down.
I need a diary. I'm sure Larry was reading that diary every day. Who knows how long he knew about this and probably was plotting this. This is probably why it's unsolved. Because Larry was plotting this for how long? From the first time he read the diary.
Another thing about Larry that was not in the articles, but I heard, is that when they searched his house, they found like a collection of pornographic materials that was next level. Almost, it was just unusual what they found. And I'm not sure if it was like a room or a dungeon just filled with craziness. That's the way they made it sound.
Right.
Like maybe he was some sexual pervert or
S&M stuff or whatever. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, that's not that bad.
Well, you know, back then in 1999.
Back then, yeah. This is before
internet porn.
well, yeah. Before internet porn, we didn't have to have boxes and boxes of magazines and tapes and stuff. But yeah, what I was gonna say is, like, you know, this is before 50 Shades of Grey came out and made the S&M bondage stuff a little more mainstream.
Yeah,
and
more
people
mainstream
saw it more.
now.
So yeah, back then it was definitely shocking to have a room like that. People are not used to it.
Now people consider that sexy.
That's sexy now, yeah. But according to this, as far as this case goes, this is a really hard one to solve.
You're right. I'm not sure why there has not been more attention brought to Eve's case. I wish she garnered the same attention like the 2002 case of Lacey Peterson from Modesto, California. I know Eve was not considered your cookie cutter perfect wife, but she still deserves justice, and her family deserves closure.
It's true. Her killer being caught will bring justice to her and her unborn child.
That's right.
You know, I know we didn't say it a lot, but you have to, you know, emphasize that there is an unborn child involved in this case too that died with her.
Mm-hmm. And who was innocent in this whole thing.
Innocent, yeah.
As someone who personally knew the victim, my wish is to use this platform to help find Eve's killer. Podcasts have a history of helping to uncover new evidence and closing cold cases. So I'm asking for everyone's help. If you have any information about this case, please contact the Nassau County Police Department or the Brooklyn's 67th Precinct. Maybe we can finally have some justice for Eve and her unborn child.
Yeah, they definitely need justice. I feel like the police didn't do enough in this case at all.
Yes, and it could be based on the fact that she did have this history of multiple affairs, and maybe they unfortunately felt like she didn't deserve justice.
Possibly. I mean, you know, it was the 90s, you know, hopefully now, you know, all these years later, though, you know, the mindset has changed and maybe there's some more diligent police, you know, out there. Because a lot of times, you know, even with, like, when women get murdered, they don't investigate it, you know, especially if they think the woman was promiscuous. Yeah.
Yes.
They feel like, oh, well, it's not worth investigating. That's that old school mentality. Yeah. You know, so maybe we can get some new detectives on this.
Yes.
You know, maybe
Dateline, Cold Case Files.
Somebody, you know, can look into this, because I feel like this is solvable. And I feel like Larry got off way too easy. All he had to do was just duck the police and get a lawyer, and all of a sudden everybody was like, oh, well, he got a lawyer, all right, let's drop it.
That's right. If you have any case ideas, email us at thestirruppodcast.com.
Or to see pictures or outtakes from our episodes, you can go to our Facebook page, IG, or TikTok.
And please be safe out there.
Peace.
You can find the Stirrup Podcast on all major podcast platforms. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're a soon-to-be parent looking for a childbirth education or newborn care class, please check out our website at www.mindbodybabynyc.com.